Hi guys, welcome back to another video. This one's a little bit different from usual because this is actually just an edited VOD of a live stream that I did last week where I drew this American lion. So sorry, the layout's a little different. You can see the UI from my iPhone camera because I use that as my webcam, though we did have some issues of like figuring out the setup, and then my phone died and I had to use my other phone, which is not as good quality. And so if you see the camera changing a lot and the layout changing a lot, that's why. But I can't really zoom in to try and get rid of like the chat and stuff for this video because it would be terrible quality. Already I could not stream at more than 780p, so this is what we got. So I apologize if it just looks a lot different as time goes on, but hopefully you can see the artwork well enough. But yeah, let me explain what I did and how I got started and the process of creating this artwork. This is the final installment of my La Brea Tar Pits Fossils series. This is the 6th illustration. It is the American lion, Panthera atrox. And if you've followed me on Instagram, then you'll see that I did finish the sticker sheet, and I did also a couple of PVC pouches with this artwork, like all the fossils artwork combined. And I'm working on a t-shirt. Actually, I'm just waiting to finish the t-shirts before I make the update live. I did make a print-on-demand version, which I may release at the same time, but I also ordered DTF prints that I'm gonna try to use myself. That will definitely keep costs down so that I don't have to charge a bajillion more dollars just to be able to sell t-shirts, because honestly print on demand is really convenient, especially to get like a large amount out of different sizes and colors. So I think I will make that an option, but you definitely have to pay more just because there's more people involved. But it does get to places like the US faster because they do have like facilities in North America rather than me in Japan. So yeah, there are pros and cons to both, but I did want to just at least try out doing DTF shirts. But let me talk about the artwork. So you saw at the beginning there was a grid. What I did was I took these photos myself, all of these fossil artworks. They were from reference photos that I took myself at the La Brea Tar Pits Museum in Los Angeles. And what I did was I took the photo of the American lion skull. Well, I like zoomed in on the skull because I knew I was going to draw the skull and not the whole skeleton. And then I put a grid on top, and then I used the same grid on just a blank sheet of paper and I printed it out. And I used the grid method to create a sketch of the American lion. I did this for the mastodon as well. Sometimes I'll just draw from sight if it like doesn't seem that complicated. Like the saber-toothed cat was just without grids or light boxes or anything. The antique bison was a different method of just like vaguely tracing around like the outside. So you see a lot of artists do that. I know tracing has like, I've mentioned this before, I know the word trace has like a bad reputation, I guess, image in the art community, but tracing to copy, especially other artists, is no bueno, of course, because you're stealing intellectual property and not really putting in the work yourself. Lightly tracing around a reference photo just so you know where things are, that's totally fine. It's a good way to learn, and it doesn't take away from the fact that you put a lot of effort to render the entire piece anyway. So it's a little bit different than what a lot of people think of when you hear trace, but trust me, a lot of professional artists do this, especially with like commission work and stuff like that. Like for example, pet portrait artists will often trace around the outline using reference photo, things like that, just to know like where are the eyes, how can I position this onto my canvas or paper. So that's all I mean when I mean tracing. You can see lots of videos of how people do that, but yeah, I used a variety of methods for this set, and for this one in particular, the American Lion, I decided to use the grid method. I did do it on A5 paper, like that's why I printed out the grid on, so it ended up being a bit bigger than my other ones, but I didn't really change anything in the end. I just had to shrink it down to make it match the other ones. But yeah, I'm doing the usual process here. You saw me picking out markers. I cut out most of that because it took quite a while, and also my camera was really bad at that point. I had used my webcam while I charged my phone. And then I swatched out a bunch of the colors. I laid down the lightest color first. I believe this is the Copic E50, which if you've watched the rest of the videos in this series, that's usually the one I go for as the base, just to keep everything cohesive. And for this one, actually, I didn't strictly go from light to dark. I decided to put in the second darkest color into the really deep recesses, like the nose and the eye and the mouth, just to have an idea of where those are. And I did, again, go around with a colored pencil, just so I didn't lose my sketch, like where things were, but I do go back over later because basically it's not dark enough for what I want in the end. So basically I use colored pencil a couple different times, but yeah, so we're just doing a similar process to usual of light to dark minus this second darkest color that I put in the deepest spots, with variations in like, are these shadows blended out, and then some harder edges to show the texture of the fossil. Yeah, I feel like this one had a bit of an ugly stage. It's putting it nicely. I remember I was saying as I was streaming repeatedly, everything has an ugly stage, everything has an ugly stage. It just didn't look good for the longest time. And so what I ended up doing was I took the colored pencil and used it a lot sooner than I normally would. Like normally I would like render most of it first with the marker, and then in the very end I go around with the colored pencil and darken up things, put in the occlusions, clean up edges, and so on. But for this one I was just like, I can't see where this is going. I can't imagine the finished product, and I feel very disheartened right now because of that, so let me just use some colored pencil. So I did, and I think once I did that, it looks so much better. Again, at this point, I was using my iPhone camera, and it was still trying to like focus weirdly. I think for the next stream, at the end of this video, it stops doing that. I don't know what I did. I think I just didn't click film, and I just cropped out the UI, and realized I didn't have to. It would be nice to film everything, but like at the same time as streaming, so that I could make a nice video of better quality. But I think it was causing a lot of lag, so I stopped filming in the end. And when I stopped filming, I can crop out the UI, and also that weird box for whenever it focuses, you know, the yellow box, stopped showing up. So later on it'll be better. Also the lighting changes just because the sun went down and my light died, and then I had to charge the light, and then I turned it back on when it was fully bright, and it looks so much better. So trust me, by the end the video quality gets better. But there's not that much to say about like the process. It's very, very similar to what I did in the previous videos. I tried to get little bits of texture, like I like the pock marks there in the chin, where you can see some of it's like hollowed out, and just doing more and more detail. Basically, again, mostly going from light to dark, so I would do like basically from wider shapes, if that makes sense. Like if you look at the shapes of the shadows, wider shapes to smaller shapes, and the smaller I got, the darker I got. And sometimes I would switch back and forth, and sometimes I was thinking, okay, we need something a little bit warmer here, a little more orangey here, and I would add that in. this is the point in which I grabbed the colored pencil and was like, I just need to make this look better. I need to see what it's gonna look like in the end. Like, I just couldn't imagine it looking good in the end. So I was like, I gotta bring back some of those darkest bits and like sort of not exactly do line art, but most things that are 3D, especially something that has like a spotlight on it in the front, like these did, because they had spotlights above that were sort of like pointed at them, you know, because it's a museum. Most things that are 3D, that are like round, right, they do have a darker edge. So even though light might hit really sharply in some points where it's going to be really light and you don't really see an edge, most of the outside of it, you can, it like you can tell it's 3D. You can, whatever's pushed back is darker. So that's why I chose colored pencil. This, I think, was the sepia colored pencil. So it wasn't the darkest color. It wasn't black, though I did, I think, go in with black at the very end. Just not all around, but in the darkest spots, because there were some pretty dark spots. I did actually use black marker here as well, which I hadn't used since the antique bison, I think. I don't think I used any black on the other ones, but there were just some really dark spots, and there just wasn't enough contrast with that dark brown. So I think that actually really pulled it together in the end. But we're not there yet. This one is like a really sort of, what is this one? What color is this? It's not this, I think this is the potato brown. I remember going in with the potato brown and being like, yes, we need more potato. And I said that probably too many times, but I thought, one, it sounded funny, but also it was true. We needed more potato. Because basically, whenever I lay a color down, I want to make sure that I use it in multiple areas, like throughout the piece, to make it look cohesive, because it's very rare, unless it's something pretty artificial, for something like this anyway, that there's just one color in one spot and nowhere else. So basically, whenever I take a color, I try to add it in multiple places throughout the piece, so that it looks like it belongs. The exceptions, of course, are like if you have a flower, obviously maybe there's some really bright yellowy orange pollen, and maybe that's not on the petals that are purple. Obviously that makes sense that you're only going to use it in like one or two spots. But for this, obviously this is one big fossil, and so we have to assume that there are similar minerals all around, and whatnot. And I'm 99.9% sure, actually I know, a vast majority of fossils on display are recreations, though what's really cool about the La Brea Tar Pits Museum is that they do actually show real fossils, but they are behind glass. So you can see some real fossils, but anything that's real is behind, well, I say glass, but it's probably just acrylic. You know, you can see it, but you can't touch it, and it's not like perfectly exposed. So this reference image, which I did end up putting up because people kept asking in both, I was streaming on both YouTube and Twitch, but unfortunately only Twitch chat could be shown on the screen. So sorry if it gets confusing. But yeah, I did end up putting up the reference image because people were asking, oh, is that a dinosaur? It looks like a dinosaur chicken nugget. But it's not. It's clearly a mammal skull. Now that it's coming together, I don't blame them at the beginning for guessing that, because it obviously does look like a fossil, and most people think of dinosaurs when they see fossils. But yeah, I did put the reference image at the top there so you can see. That's not a real fossil. I really don't think that's real. It's obviously reconstructed, right, with materials that can safely be shown and hung up in the air. So, but really good replicas. Very realistic looking, for sure. So anyways, my point is, we had to make it look like a fossil, and fossils generally are, I mean, it could be real bone, of course, and bones are made of generally the same materials throughout, maybe spots of something somewhere and whatnot, but generally the same material. And fossils are, of course, bones where the materials have been replaced with non-organic materials, and they tend to be the same depending on what's in the surrounding area, a mix of different materials. So it's very rare to see just like one little spot of like one color and not in the rest, because usually the way that things are seeping in and replacing other things, you're generally not going to find one type of material in one spot and not in other spots. So yeah, that's the idea for most things anyway. Even if I'm like drawing a live animal, like the animal's fur is probably going to have the same colors in multiple spots, even if they do have distinct markings. So I try to take that color and use it in as many places as possible before moving on to the next one. And sometimes I'll even go back and grab the same color. I did that a whole lot of times when I feel like there just wasn't enough somewhere. There were a few times where I, found some shapes of like lighter bits where the light was hitting and made them pretty big, and then later decided to make those places smaller. Like, just the more that I looked at it, the more I saw the shapes changing, I guess. So you can see like here, even though I already went in with darker colors, I'm going in with a slightly lighter color to add more shading to places where like I just either didn't see it before or I was too afraid to lay down a darker color. And I think for the most part I did a pretty good job of preserving the lights where I wanted them. And then I did go in later with a little bit of the Holbein white colored pencil, the soft white, and then a gel pen, which I think I didn't overdo it. I liked how it looked in the end. So yeah, let me know what you think, if you think it's too shiny. But I think this fossil was under a lot of lights anyway, so it does kind of look shiny anyway. And I think what would have been better, like this is where I'm using the white, if I could have used other colors apart from white. So I'm thinking of expanding maybe my Holbein collection if possible. Money's a little tight right now, I'm on a budget. But if I had like a really soft colored pencil of like more of a beige color or light beige that could layer well, I think it would have been a little bit better, a little more natural than the bright white. So I tried to use a light hand with the white because it's not super natural, but I did need to lighten up some spots for sure. So in the future, hopefully I'll have access to those kinds of materials. I think Prismacolors layer pretty well, but I can't really get them here, especially open stock. And the Arctics ones don't really, like, they're pretty soft and they're really nice, but they don't really layer on top of darker colors like that Holbein soft white did. So yeah, this is near the end. This is where I decided I needed a little black colored pencil because some parts were just not dark enough. And I was like, firstly, even if I go in with the black colored pencil, it's not going to look black because it's not going to be super dark, and I already had brown under it. So it's more of a just very dark brown once layered. And then eventually I was like, we're still missing some of the darkest darks. Like, looking at that reference image, some bits need to be a lot darker. So this is where I went in with that black. And initially I had a really hard time blending out the black. It just wasn't blending. I don't know if it's just because it's a different type of marker. These are Ohuhu markers, the triangle ones, but a different kind. So I don't know why it wasn't blending out, but I ended up doing more of like not strictly blending with the dark brown, but like, I don't know how to describe it. Doing marks, like thicker marks and smaller marks, until it gradually faded to no marks. You know what I mean? I don't know if you know what I mean, but I think it made an interesting texture. And that's it. I signed it, and then we were done. So this is what it looks like. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you think. Give this video a like if you liked it. And if you want to see more art like this, including live streams, I stream art and I stream games, go ahead and subscribe to this channel and make sure you turn on notifications, and I'll see you next time. Bye!